Blessings and good chi, my friends and family. This episode is near and dear to my heart, so it's from my heart to yours. I'm sharing about my purpose and mission to empower individuals to optimize, harmonize, and align their energy to achieve their dreams and to fulfill their dharma. I see this as a solution for many individuals to get off big pharma and get on to dharma. It's got a ring to it. At the level of the individual, the holistic energy medicine system helps support people in their empowerment to overcome imbalance, to overcome diseases, to overcome lack of will, lack of purpose, to get a clear vision of their life, to track their life force energy management, to develop practices, systems, and routines that are prescriptive for what's going on for them, that bring about the empowerment, that bring about the intelligent use of energy through cultivation of qi, through qigong, through yoga, through breathwork. That's at the level of the individual. As this ripples out, I see this as a solution for many of the larger problems that society is dealing with. Our disconnection from nature, our disconnection from holistic systems, and from gathering together in community to heal and to co-create with one another. I'm so happy to bring this system forth because it's been and is being birthed through me. I don't know what term I'm in. I don't know if I've had the baby yet. I feel like I've had the baby and now I'm raising her. And with any purpose or mission, like raising a child, you can put so much love into it. And there's no limit to how much love you can put in, and you can continue to pour that in. And I've felt that for the last few years. And sometimes that's hard to pour so much love into something and not know where it's going, not even have a full vision of what you're doing and what's the end goal. But that's part of the journey, and I feel more surrendered to my path and purpose than I ever have. And it feels so good to just be where I'm at with it. And some of these practices of some of the things that I'm teaching, I've been working with for over 10 years. And others, the system has come together in a more complete way in the more recent times. But I know this stuff works because the system that I created is much more a synthesis of interrelated energetic maps and practices from different cultures that have woven together for specific purposes to empower individuals, just as my mission and purpose states. So the track record on all these things, I didn't create the 5-element theory of traditional Chinese medicine. I didn't create the 7-chakra model. I didn't create qigong and yoga. Though I definitely spice in my own practices and individual soul in the way that I teach. These practices have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and the systems are important, the practices and techniques as they're passed on. But in my opinion, more importantly, particularly with Qigong, yoga, and breath work, is connecting with the maker of the breath, the intelligent life force energy of Qi, that when we learn that, that's the true Satguru, the teacher within. I'm sharing this system in a way that as I go through it, you can walk yourself with me through the different components as your own self-assessment and apply the information and teachings in your own way. Of course, if you would like to learn more about these systems, there will be many links and resources in the description below. But in as best as I can, I want to share this information in a way that's, 1, entertaining for you, 2, gives you practical tools and a way to understand what it is to have holistic systems in your life and how to take the big picture perspective, because that's one of the strengths that I have in life. I'm somebody who can do many different things in life and keep them in balance because I work with many different systems that let me take like the eagle eye view of my life and see how many different disparate parts are all weaving together to create something beautiful, and how to keep all these different parts in balance. And it's something that I've been able to support a lot of people with, because in our modern world, we're going to work, we have families, we have hobbies, We have our health to track. We have all these different things and so many distractions in life. It's an era like no other. So systems that help us to take a comprehensive look at where we're spending our life force energy, because it's the most important resource we have. It's our life force. And I'll get more into how we spend our life force and the dynamics of this as we actually get into the episode. But let's just go on a brief overview of what we're going to cover today. So I have the holistic energy medicine system and the Wuji internal art. And technically they're just one thing. The holistic energy medicine system is an 8-dimensional model, 8 interwoven theories and practices put into one system. And that's a lot. Really, it's lifetimes of study, a lifetime of study per any one system, and yet there's 8 woven into this. So it's all about application. If someone just comes and sees me in a one-on-one visit, I'm applying the system in my own thinking, and I may share some bit of it. If they're working with me for like a longer term coaching, we're going to be applying the systems at a much deeper level, getting them to do certain daily and weekly practices. If I'm training somebody, like my upcoming 2-day training in July, or my fall training, my 5-day holistic energy medicine and Wuji internal art and Tai Chi breathwork. Oh my goodness, such a long name. Got to figure out how to put that one in a shorter format. Then I'm giving them the layout of it, and the practical application and the learning of the system is going to take time, yeah? Because we have to integrate these things before we can teach them. We have to be practicing them if we're going to offer them. Live it to teach it, you know? So the holistic energy medicine model has these 8 different theories, and it's the framework for understanding the energetic universe and body, as well as the system for assessing life force energy management. The Wuji internal art harmonizes mostly yoga and qigong practices for energy cultivation, though there's influence from other dynamic meditation, exercise, dance, etc. As they apply together, the holistic energy medicine model, the mapping of the energetic system, gives us our assessments where we can, in some sense, diagnose, but we can see where there are energetic imbalances. From these energetic imbalances, we apply the Qigong and yoga as the prescriptive treatment to treat those energetic imbalances. Just as a physiotherapist who works more with the physical body would assess the imbalance of certain muscles and apply specific exercises to bring balance of those muscles, the same thing, but this is for the energy. So we look at the 5-element model, we look at the chakra model, we look at what's happening mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. We look at the 8 trigrams. For example, these are just different systems. You don't have to use all of them. But getting an understanding of where the underlying energetic imbalance is at the root cause, and how can we prescribe a specific energetic practice, a breathing exercise, a mantra, or something that can bring about balance and harmony. And just like you would go see your physiotherapist, your doctor, you're going to be evaluated. I mean, this is for my long-term clients. Evaluated on, hey, are these prescription practices working? What are the effects? Do we need to alter, just like you alter medication? Do we need more repetitions? Do we need a different approach to things? Why would we want to work with the energy? Well, the energy is speaking to one, mental, emotional, physical, and really spiritual. So we're looking at a more comprehensive way to look at imbalances. So if you're struggling with pain in your knee, it might be because you had an injury, but there might be some underlying spiritual dynamic at play. There might be a blockage in your energetic system, meaning mentally, emotionally, that has contributed to or is contributing to this imbalance or condition. There might have been a reason why, energetically, mentally, emotionally, why this injury had come about. So we want to get an understanding of what might be happening on a more subtle realm than what we can see symptomatically or at the gross physical level. Particularly important in diseases or conditions like cancer or heart disease, almost always, like 99.9%, I don't know if there is a 0.1% where it's not, there is an underlying energetic dynamic of what's going on. A blocked emotion, trauma, past life, karma, all different kinds of things can contribute to what is arising in our system at any one time, as is your or our fundamental relationship with whatever disease, condition, imbalance, pain that may be showing up in the body. For example, if I have knee pain and my relationship to that pain is, oh, my fucking knee, this thing always goes out and I want to fix it. Think about that relationship as any other relationship. Would you want that relationship with your knee to be the same as that relationship with your niece? Because our body is no different than who we are. Our body is us. So when we relate to a part of our body like, oh, that fucking knee, if that was projected out onto a person, how would they feel? And then the idea of I want to fix it rather than can I accept my pain? Can I accept myself for having this pain or injury? And then go about the healing. And that's a whole world of a difference. I've seen this so many times where individuals, I know this so many, okay, let's go personal. I know this deeply within myself. If there's a tight part of my body that I want to stretch or a pain and I just want to fix it, I might do some physio and it might work, but a lot of the times I need to accept where I'm at first, which allows me to actually feel the pain or imbalance in a whole different way rather than resist the pain and want it to go away, which is a whole different internal program, right? And then I can build a relationship with that pain of acceptance, and then I can listen to that pain as a teacher, which will guide me towards the specific healing practices, even if I'm reaching out to a healer, but I'll have the intuition or guidance to do so. But within my own yoga and qigong practice, a lot of the times when I just want to fix something within myself, I'll pull out a pattern like excessive force, where I'm trying to stretch something that's loose and I push it and I push it. And that's a poor relationship that I have within myself. That sometimes when I'm stressed and things are going wrong, I'll push and push, which might be a different pattern for you, because this is all very deep in our internals. Like this is our psyche at play at different levels. So all these pains and all these tightness of our body, they're teaching us about, one, where the imbalances are in our system, and the energetic maps can give us more insight, and two, our relationship with self, which is the most important relationship because it's the foundation of all other relationships. So when I'm accepting of what's going on in my system and I'm breathing into it so I can experience, know it as truth, and then listen to it, it guides me. And then even if I don't release the pain in that moment, I'm accepting of it. And that gives me a compassion, that gives me a way of relating to myself that I would love to bring to other relationships in my life, yeah? So everything has underlying energetic dynamics. I was speaking about it in terms of mental, emotional, and physical, but it's also energetic. What that means is you have a physical body. You do have a physical body, right? Check. Okay, you got a physical body. It's got muscles, bones, skin, fascia, layers, organs, all these things. And you have a mind, the mental substance, yeah? Mostly found in the head, a thinking organ, the brain at least. And it's not just in the brain, there's a mind field, right? Because your mind can go in your body, your mind can look across the room using your senses, your mind can go to Jupiter. Right now, you can picture you're on Jupiter. Your mind is quite incredible. The mind field, which, your mind is connected with all other minds in some way. There's really only one mind, says the law of the Hermetics. And we all share it, which says we all share a nervous system. Mind is incredible. And the relationship between your mind and your body has an intermediary, which is energy. So when you think thoughts, they have a certain energy or frequency. Positive thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts that are filled with emotion, the love, the anger, these things all contribute to our thinking and the frequency of those thoughts. And this has an effect on the body. And the energy is the intermediary. And how you think changes the energy as it flows through your body, through energetic meridians, nadis, etc. But the body also influences the mind. If your mind is feeling stagnant, maybe negative thinking, circular thoughts, and looping, and you go for a run out in nature, you're going to shift the energies. You're going to shift the mind. There's a relationship between mind and body, and the energy is the intermediary. Now you can work on your mind with your body, and you can work on your body with your mind, and you can do both, and you can work directly with the energy itself, getting to know it's like, is it stagnant? Is it balanced? Is it regulated? Is it flowing? Is it turbulent? We get to know our energy at the level of energy, and we do energy work to bring it into balance, which has a rippling effect for both mind and body. It's a very holistic way of working with the system. And that's the energy of Qigong and breath work, especially Qigong as we go deeper into the art, yeah? So this is why everything gets pulled together in that way. So as a review, we have the 8 dimensions of the holistic energy medicine system, the energetic maps for tracking life force energy, and the holistic picture of our life and daily rhythms. And then we have the Wuji internal art, which comprises the movement and breathing and meditations that help to support our life force energy management. Let's go over the holistic energy medicine system in brevity. It has 8 different dimensions. The first is the vision. The vision for your life is what Paul Chek calls your one love. The vision for your life is your organizing principle and the motivation. This is why you do everything. This is your mission and purpose. These are all words that I would throw into one vision. This is one of the most important things to clarify. Whether you're facing a health challenge, an imbalance, or a disease, or you're just looking for, let's say, life coaching and you want to move forward towards that vision. Either way, that's the motivation, that's the organizing principle. That's the thing that gives you the energy to do the thing, which is not the thing you're doing, which is typically, especially in the case of someone with an imbalance or a disease or condition, you're doing things and life is going to ask you to let go of certain things and take on new things. And the motivation to do that, to get out of old patterns, to get out of comfort, comes from having a why that grows you, that allows you to go beyond. And typically this means going beyond pleasure and pain, meaning the nervous system is usually oriented subconsciously towards, I want pleasure, I don't want pain. What happens when you have a vision? Say you have a family or you're building a business or something that you love, you're willing to sacrifice your personal pleasure and take on discomfort for that vision. This is where the inner will and strength comes from to overcome. Many people, especially within diseases or conditions, they get caught in the discomfort of it, and it only gets worse and worse if it spirals down. So the vision is so important. It's so important that in my system you connect with it every single day, really every single moment of every day to the best of your abilities, because that's the why that, I mean, going back to what this is, these are 8 dimensions of our life force energy management. And you saying yes to life is a constant conversation every moment. And it influences every system in your body. And if you're saying no to life, your mind immediately shuts down. It's not open. It's not available for solutions. If your will to live is not there, your breathing is impacted, which impacts your nervous system, which impacts every other system in your body. That choice to say yes to life, in Lakota they say, Wani Wachielo, I want to live. And they don't just say it, they sing it at the top of their lungs, like they're crying out to Creator, like when a baby is born, crying out without ego, without holding back, I want to live. When we say yes to life in this way, the impossible becomes possible. And that's the vision. If you have a vision that's worth saying yes to life, it's worth any pain that you're going through. It's worth it because you will overcome. That's the way. So this is the number one thing to look for when assessing life force energy management. Is the person saying yes to life? Which, as I mentioned, it affects the breathing. Because when we inhale, we're opening our body to receive life force energy. And now this isn't a simple question of yes, no. I mean, it is and it isn't. There's yes, and there's like 1 out of 10 yes, 3 out of 10 yes, 10 out of 10 full fuck yes. So there's a spectrum there. When someone's 10 out of 10 yes, it means they're fully saying yes to life, and that's going to show up in their breathing pattern and their capacity to open. When something is like a 4 out of 10 yes, it means they're saying yes to life, but there's parts of them that are holding on, that aren't saying yes. And that's going to show up in the body as tension, as holding patterns, which will either be in the diaphragm or in the abdomen or in the fascia. And this will prevent the individual from fully taking in life force energy. There's parts of their physical and energetic, which is going to ripple into their mind, that are saying no, they're closed down. So this is an entry point for the holistic energy medicine system to identify, okay, how open is this person to receive life? And for now, let's just put a little note there. Let's just say vision. Are they choosing to say yes to life? And to what degree are they saying yes? And that's a great question to answer for you right now. How clear in your vision are you? And when I mean clear in your vision, I do mean quite detailed. Not that you're attached or gripping onto every detail, but do you know your why? Like your purpose, your mission? Do you want a family or not? Where do you want to live? Like, where are you now and where are you going? What kind of body do you want? What types of things are going to be your legacy? These bigger questions help so much to build this orientation. And then to what degree are you saying yes to that? Number 2, the 2 fundamental forces are yin and yang. As we balance, as we learn to live in balance, we learn to harmonize yin and yang differentials. This is what we're constantly doing in life. If you think about balancing, you can be in the midline, but you're making constant, tiny adjustments to your system to prevent you from falling over. We're always doing this in life. We're making these constant adjustments and balancing just to stand up and live on this planet, which is spinning around, I don't know the numbers, thousands of kilometers, 20,000, I forget what it is now. But we're moving fast through the universe, yeah? And within our own body, everything has this 2-force polarity. Something's hard, something's soft. Different parts of your body are opening, other parts are closing. There's all these interrelationships that allow us to maintain varying degrees of homeostasis or balance. Now, balancing out the body in terms of like, are the muscles balanced with like the antagonist, agonist muscles balance with one another? And I talked about this in the last one. I'm not going to go into great detail because that would completely sidetrack us. But are the muscles balanced in the body so that our postural systems and our phasic moving systems are balanced in a reasonable way at least? And then it gets down to like, as you go into Qigong, you literally work with energy. So yin and yang energy in the body are the magnetic versus the more electric energy fields balance in your system. And we can bring them into ever more like the greater levels of harmony in the system, which builds greater central equilibrium or zhongding or central equanimity. But as a more like external looking at your life sort of deal, are you balanced between the energy that you're spending and the energy that you're taking in? One of the exercises that I do for this one is write down all the things that give you energy and all the things that are taking your energy, and look at a given week. How much energy, because this is about your life force energy, how much energy are you spending? And for some people, this might be, I work 8 hours and that takes my energy. And then I come home and I do this activity and that takes some energy and gives me some. And then this one takes and I spend, an hour doing this and it gives me energy, but they're way off. They're building up a debt in their life force energy. As we go through the system and get to the end, there's, hey, we look at all these things and what can we do to support this? But for now, are we actually in balance with the universe? This can apply to so many different things. This can apply to our money. Are we making more money than we're spending? So the two forces principle becomes really important as a way to balance out energy in our lives. 3, there were 3 realms. There's the heavens above, there's the realm of man or mankind, which is like the human level, and then the earth below. I use this aspect of the system as an energetic map when we start working in the shamanic realms and the earth-based realms, when we start working with the heavenly chi and the earthly chi in Qigong. As per our present life force energy management, I'm just going to skip over this and the next section just to be more brief. As I mentioned, this is a really comprehensive system and we don't need to go really deep into all aspects. The 4th is the 4 directions: mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritual, and the 4 directional medicine wheel map. 5 we will discuss, which is the 5 element model of traditional Chinese medicine, which is another medicine wheel which connects our emotions, our organs, elements, the seasons, to all kinds of other things such as sounds and tastes and colors. And it's a map for identifying imbalances within us. One of the easiest ways to do this is to track negative emotion. For example, which is the dominant negative emotion you experience in your last 2 weeks? Anger, anxiety, worry, sadness, or fear? And there's many different, like a spectrum. So let's say anger is in the middle. Mild anger is like frustration, and high levels of anger is like blinding rage. Anxiety, we have like full out shock. On one end, we have mild anxiety in the middle, and then panic attack on the other end. So these are spectrums. We may experience multiple of these, but finding the root imbalance is going to be really key. So for example, an individual might feel frustrated, and the story or belief system there is that they feel that they're trapped. And there might be a circumstance they can apply that to. But they're feeling trapped, and really what's going on a deeper level is they're actually in a deep fear state, and they're exhausted. And usually they wouldn't react with anger, but because they're so exhausted, that's when they get pulled into allowing that negative emotion to sweep them away, so to speak. So fear would be the one to work on primarily, though you can work on both. And then we would use the 5 element holistic energy map, which should prescribe certain movement exercises from Qigong, etc. We're going to talk about treatment in a little bit. But just having an identification of the 5 element is going to be really important for building this map. Number 6 and 7 go together. You have 6 major body zones, and they connect with the 6 chakras in the body. Your legs are connected with the first chakra. If there's imbalance in your legs, this may point to something to do with your safety, security, your fundamental support, your relationship to the earth, or your finances, which has a lot to do with your personal safety and security, yeah? If you experience imbalance in your second chakra, this might be related to your hips, your sexuality, expression of emotion, your one-on-one relationships, and your creative life force energy. If you experience imbalance in your navel and solar plexus regions, this is related to your third chakra. It's all about empowerment. It's about your ego. It's about the empowerment of archetypes that you embody. It's about your self-esteem, your digestion, your working out, etc. If you experience imbalance in your heart chakra, it's the chest, arms, and hands, you may experience problems to do with, or stressors to do with your love, feelings of hate, if you're not forgiving somebody, these kinds of things. The fifth chakra has to do with your communication, your expression, your speaking of truth and recognizing truth, and also your listening. And then your sixth chakra has to do with the head, particularly the forehead. If you're overly in the mind, that would be an imbalance here. If you're blocked from your creativity, your imagination, your visualization, these could be imbalances in the sixth chakra. The seventh chakra is above the body, so it doesn't have a body zone. This one has to do more with spirituality, which we won't go into great detail here. Each of these chakras connects to these body zones, and it goes into greater detail with like connections between organs, developmental years, etc., etc. What to know about a chakra is that it can be overactive or underactive, and this will manifest different in the physical because the underlying energetics are much different. For example, your first chakra has a lot to do with your fight or flight system and fear, because it's about your foundational safety and security. It's connected with your kidneys, particularly your adrenal glands. If it's overactive, you're more likely to experience fight or flight as hyperarousal in your nervous system, stress behaviors, whereas if it's underactive, you're more likely to be in hypoarousal, like dissociating behaviors, lost in the mind, underactivity, maybe even leading into depression, burnout, etc. So do you understand how it can be overactive and that'll show up in the system different? And this could be quite overt. For example, an overactive third chakra in the abdomen may look like excessive tone or holding patterns, would be a more accurate way to say that, in the core region. Now, I don't mean you have a really hard six-pack because you're overactive in your third chakra. It would be more of like the fascia has a holding pattern, which is preventing the diaphragm from expanding, and there's a stuckness in the fascia, and it could also be in the muscles. It could be an underlying organ imbalance. It would ripple to all of these because the underlying energetics are overactive. And because it's overactive, it has the muscles and the fascia and the nervous system in that region has an inability to relax. So the balance, this is where the yin and yang comes in, of inhale and exhale, of contract and release in the system, becomes off, that you're tilted towards contraction, and that is going to have an effect on how the breathing affects your organs, how the circulation goes into your organs, your digestion, which is going to impact the way you digest emotions, which is having an effect on your self-esteem and your body. You have an inability to breathe and process information through your nervous system, and as I mentioned, processing emotion because the breath is blocked. So it's going to have a rippling effect, and this may all have this underlying energetic below it of not feeling confident and having blocked emotion, which is held somewhere in the body. And then this leads to an eating condition where you're eating to fill the space where that emotion is rather than feel it. And then the digestion's going off. And you can see how this can spiral into all kinds of things, but it's rooted in an underlying, like a root cause, as being low self-esteem or whatsoever it is. But the energetics being off has a rippling effect in the behaviors, in the diet, etc., etc. And then we see these patterns showing up in body zones and connected to different energetic maps. Now, I'm just expressing it, the 6 zones and the 7 chakras, but all these maps interconnect, meaning that when you have something in the abdomen that's off, this is going to connect with the 5 chakras. This is going to connect with yin and yang because it is overactive, underactive. If you're just hearing this for the first time, this might seem like an overwhelming amount of information, and I wouldn't ask you to try to understand and comprehend all of it at once, nor do I ask my clients to do that. These are all just extensive maps that, once again, over time we learn more and more to identify these things so that we can become more empowered, and we just learn with where we're at. And sometimes we just need to know one model to give us enough to go off of and then move forward from there. The 8 trigrams is the 8th dimension in the energetic models. And the 8 trigrams, pardon me, is the way in which chi moves, or it's a system describing the way that chi moves through the body and as forces in nature. So the 8 trigrams are heaven and earth, fire and water. We have wind, mountain, lake, and thunder. And these describe ways that energy moves through nature. Water moves down in a certain way. Lightning or thunder moves in a very particular way. Mountain has a still and stable quality. Lake has a still but expansive quality. And these things are within us. So when I'm assessing myself, and I had a really great ecstatic dance last night, and I was assessing my energetic body and what I needed to bring myself into harmony, because this is what the system's about. This is what Chinese medicine and Qigong is about. The 8 Bagua is from Taoism, which is connected with the Qigong. It's about bringing us into balance. And when I showed up to dance, I was like, I'm going to dance through all of the 8 trigrams. So I would move my body and energy and breath in a way that reflected each of the trigrams. So mountain breathing, I held my body really still, and I breathed in a regulated way in and out my nose. Fire breathing, I breathed in through my mouth, and then I kind of heated the breath up by contracting my solar plexus like this. That's a very fiery kind of breath. It creates heat in the body, literally. And then I would move in a more fiery way. Water, my movement became more flowy. That's like breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. As I moved like wind or air, I became more flowy, but in a different way than water is flowy. And then I used this to go into my body, so I have a little bit of neck tension, and I felt into the energy, and I was like, it feels like congestion and gripping. I was like, congestion. Okay, well, that's kind of like a thick, mushy, marshy. What if I added like a little bit of water into that? So I added like a watery movement. So I moved my neck in a way like I was a slithering snake underwater, which I went swimming earlier in the day. So that really primed me for that one. And I was like, ooh, this is a really excellent way to get at the tensions, which is really interesting because I've tried a number of stretches for my neck, and it responds different to different energies. So if I just like turn my head to the right and I hold it in a static stretch, that's not what it needs. It wants, in the case of my neck, it wants to move around more like a snake. So when we really pay attention to the body, and this comes back to what I was teaching in the beginning about really feeling into what does that energy want and how does it want to move. This is part of the Bagua and the two forces, is it often wants the opposite quality of what it is. So if it's very rigid, it most likely wants something like water or wind that's going to help to break up that stagnation. And for a part that's underactive, it's probably going to want something like mountain or fire to activate it, to bring it into balance. But different parts of the body will want different things. My hips had some stagnation and they wanted some fire to break that up first, then some water, and then coming into mountain to stabilize it. Because at a fundamental, this is the teachings here, we are fundamentally made of these energies like building blocks. Just as nature is made as these energies and it manifests more in their raw elemental form, they are within us. So we can understand ourselves as energy. And this is, you could say, the next level of this system. It's not just learning a bunch of concepts. It's actually understanding yourself as these things and getting to, on a felt sense level, experience these energies within your own body until you have enough of a, let's say, repertoire and toolbox of energetic tools, which we'll get to the treatments of all these things and the diagnosing in some sense of these. So that would be the next steps of this, yeah? I mean, we're there, so let's talk about it. So let's do a quick rehashing of some information, and I'll create a little bit of an example so that we can look at it through the lens of Wuji prescriptions. We were looking through the whole model. It starts out with the vision. Does this person have a clear vision for their life? Because that's how the energy is going to be flowing through them. Say they have a fairly clear vision. They have an idea of what they want to do, but there's not a lot of clarity. There's not like a plan in place. And they're facing some health imbalances, some stress and tension in their system, some financial things going on that prevent them from moving forward. Okay. And they're like 4 out of 10 saying yes to life. Great. We can deal with vision on its own in many ways, and we can apply it to the system. So if I was just dealing with vision on its own, I would take what the vision is, what the primary challenges are. I talked about finances. I talked about some stress and tension. Maybe there's some underlying disbelief that they're educated enough or that they deserve the vision that they have. I would extrapolate from those key challenges. Let's say the finances, they don't have the financial income to make their next steps. Then I can go, okay, what's the underlying belief system? What's the underlying emotion? Okay, let's say it's I don't have enough and fear. Great. Now we have an energetic basis to what that challenge is. And we know that that challenge isn't just something happening on the outside. There's a corresponding emotion and belief system on the inside. So the inner work to do is to identify what inner work needs to be done, which is the belief system and that emotion. If we can clear that negative emotion, that fear from the system, then we can enliven or empower a new belief system, a new perspective, which can give, I mean, I'm sure you've had it. You clear some fear or some negative emotion from your system, and you see a whole new perspective, and you realize there was a solution to your problem the whole time, but you just had to think different. That happens when we're open to a new idea, which is when we let go of an old idea that was holding place of that, which was the limit of our mind and what we thought was possible. So inner work as an exploration of outer success is this continual understanding what are the challenges in our lives and what are the underlying energetics mentally, emotionally, and how is this affecting our energetics, and continually doing practices to clear our energetics so that we can find solutions. Now, I also mentioned that if we're not saying yes to life, it's going to have a corresponding effect on our breathing. And then we can look at the breathing pattern through many different lenses, such as all of these models, which will have a relationship with the breathing pattern. And there are specific practices, that we can do to open up the breath to say yes to life, which is one of the foundational ideas behind Tantra and many of these practices, is that when you are happy, when you are laughing, when you are orgasming, when you are doing all the many things that you love, naturally there's a state of your body. There's a way that you breathe. There's a way that your system, your nervous system, is open to receive energy and information. There's a difference between how your senses open up to receive the world itself. Now, often we experience these open states when something happens, like we fall in love or we win something. But the key here is that we can open ourselves up without those things that are outside of us. We can learn to do a breathwork practice that opens us up as if we're falling in love. It takes some work often to get to that place, but that's the inner cultivation work that allows for a more sustainable resourcing of that energy from source rather than from something outside of ourselves, which can help with a whole retraining of our conditioned relationship with thinking the love is outside of ourselves, to truly fill our own cup and to rewrite that script on a very deep level. So if we see someone is like a 4 out of 10 and they're saying yes to life and they're not breathing very deep, simply bringing someone through a breathing practice to open up their breathing can be very supportive. I mean, a short breathing practice might help. If there's a deeper underlying fear, that fear would often have to be felt and addressed, and that practice might have to be more than just a short practice, something more like a conscious connected breathing practice, which I'll most likely mention when I talk about Wuji. So let's move on from vision, but just know we got lots of information that comes up off of that. So wherever you're at in your vision, this has so much information that is like, these are where your major blocks are. This is, for most people, why they're not feeling 10 out of 10 saying yes to life, is because there's something blocking their purpose that they are or are not aware of, that they are or are not like actively working on. So it's often in the shadows. It's a fear that they won't have enough or they won't be good enough. And that's actually putting them in it's actually like a flight response, but they're not aware of it. Because they're not aware of this fear, they don't realize that they're running from their purpose, and they may be going to a job or something and they're doing that, but they don't really love it because they're too afraid to actually look towards their purpose. All kinds of different scenarios. That's just an example of one. Two forces. This principle is more like an application onto other ones. As I mentioned in the body zones and 7 chakras. If something is too much, it's overactive, well, to bring it into balance, we want to apply the two forces principle to reduce it. If something's really tight in the body, typically we want to soften it. If something's really hot in the body, typically we want to cool it. So this is more of an application. You can look at the breath through the two forces lens. If someone's over breathing, well, let's slow their breathing down, etc., etc. As I mentioned, we're going to skip over the 3 realms and the 4 directions. As we get to the 5 elements, let's say the individual is experiencing fear, as we've talked about, related to finances. We'll just carry on the same example throughout all of them. This will affect their kidney system, the water element in the body, most likely affecting their low back, because when an organ has stress, the organ itself doesn't always exhibit pain, because organs don't really have pain receptors, but that information will be passed along to surrounding muscles because the organ and the muscles share a same nerve root. So a lot of times we see imbalances in the muscles, and they're not actually from the muscles. It's actually an underlying organ imbalance. I believe it's called a somatic something organal reflex. That's not the right word, but you get the idea. And this is a carryover. So a lot of people who have low back pain it's referred pain from their kidneys or adrenals or deeper down, which is connected to fear most commonly in their system. So let's say they're exhibiting that. Fear is their number one, though they're having some anger and frustrations because they're feeling trapped in their old job. That makes them really angry. They're feeling depleted. They're oscillating between hyper arousal, going into hyper stress states at work, drinking lots of coffee. And then once they're out of work, hypo arousal, they're dissociating, they're exhausted, they don't have energy, and they're watching TV. Low back's hurting and tightening, as are the legs, not feeling like they want to work out or move very much. Sound familiar? I'm sure we've all been there. Okay, so I've already discussed a little bit about body zones from that example, talking about the low back and the legs being off. So we know that has to do with low back could be like first, second, and third chakra, but it's primarily in the leg region for this example, let's say. And then we know chakras, we have first, second, and third, but because we're talking about fear, this would more be connected to the first chakra, but we can get a more detailed understanding if this was an actual human about what's going on. We could ask questions about their digestion, etc. When I assess individuals, I have a number of different questionnaires. My basic intake form has a few pages. The next basic intake form has about 10 pages. And then if you're doing like a longer term coaching with me, it's about 30 pages of questions to really get a deep analysis about what's going on, which is both supportive for a person's inner like self-referencing, or what we call that, self-reflection, pardon me, but also for a more detailed way of gathering information for the prescriptions. So once we have a little bit more information about these, we could also look at it from the 8 trigrams. I don't want to give too much information on you that's not relevant. What we do is we apply these to what's called the 8 holistic health principles. Almost had my childhood lisp come out there, I think. Fun tangent. I had speaking issues and I had to go through speech therapy as a kid. And I still, to this day, am learning to talk. So once we have a bunch of this information, including the physical, like what's happening in the body, what's happening on the 5 elements map and the 7 chakras, what's happening with their vision, we look to the 8 holistic health principles. This is drinking. This is like drinking water, not drinking alcohol. Drinking, eating, breathing, moving, sleeping, and thinking. And then yin time and yang time. Yin time is like your time for relaxation, introspection, rest. Rest meaning active rest, like qigong. Passive rest, like meditation. And total rest, like sleep. And then yang time is doing things that you love. Doing things that make you happy. This helps you to say yes to life, right? This is an essential part of holistic living. It's not just doing exercises to help out with imbalances. It's living a fulfilled life. So the 8 holistic health principles are what we recommend, or what I recommend for individuals to bring these elements into balance. So in regards to the vision, if there are specific challenges, those could be addressed different as separate goals. Meaning that if there are financial challenges and there's some actions that an individual can take to help move those forward, that would be addressed different. The 8 holistic health principles are, well, it says it right in the name. These are about holistic health rather than identifying challenges in their life and doing more of like a coaching model or a therapeutic model of what can be done off of those. So in regards to the imbalance of fear that was extrapolated from the I don't have enough story, from the example we gave about the individual who wants to move towards their dreams but is blocked in fear, we can look to, okay, what type of breathing exercise is going to support this individual? We know there's low back pain, or there's low back tightness, is what I said. We know that there's anger in the system, which causes a lot of rigidity, particularly in the throat space and the jaw, etc., etc. I'm not going to go over the specific breathing pattern, but there are many different breathing patterns that are respective to clearing out those particular emotions. Okay, maybe I should, because that's not really clear. There's a number of ways we can do this. One is that all of the negative emotions that I mentioned earlier, the 5 negative emotions, anger and anxiety and fear, etc., have one or more breathing patterns associated with them. Anger is like, it's like a controlled inhale with more of a huff on the exhale. Anxiety depends on where you're at. If you're in the shock, well, then you're not breathing, kind of like a fight, flight. It's a freeze response. Just as another example, hyperventilation would be the extreme on that one. If you're in the fight or flight, it's like short, shallow, sharp breathing up in the chest. If you're sad, it's like staccato, etc., etc. If somebody is holding a lot of this emotion and they haven't released it, or they're not, let's just say they haven't released it because they're holding it, they can practice that particular breathing pattern in a safe context where they're willing to go into it to discharge that energy from the system. Otherwise, it may remain there pent up and unaddressed. So, for example, what might that look like as a prescriptive exercise? If it's anger, if they have a punching bag or a bag of rice and a pillow, what they can do is they can bring up the exact circumstance that makes them angry to actually bring up the felt sense of that emotion, pick the breathing pattern, go into it, and then rage or let out that anger as an expression. Beat the bag, whether that's a bag of sand or whatever it is therapeutically, and then come into kindness after, safety and regulation, to help clear some of that emotion. If you're working, that's like your self at home homework, yeah? If you're working with me, it might be more like a somatic experiencing. It might be more like a breathwork session to address that. But that's a whole different line of thinking. This is more for your own personal prescription. So too, with any of the other emotions, we look to go into it, to feel it, to heal it. So if we've identified other negative emotions, we may choose that breathing pattern and go into it. But in general, we can also prescribe other breathing patterns that are supportive for anything else going on in the system. In the example that I gave, the individual was going to work in a job that they didn't like, which they would drink a bunch of coffee, go into hyperarousal, so they would stress their system out, and then they would get depleted by the end of their day, hypoarousal, and be exhausted. So they don't have a regulated nervous system is what I'm describing. So practices that help to balance out the nervous system, to create safety, and to draw in more energy or chi cultivation through the breath could be very supportive. There are many different examples of this. I won't go over those because I think those ones are a little bit more self-explanatory than the releasing of emotion. But you get the idea, right? We're looking at the underlying energetic maps and we're prescribing breathing pattern exercises as part of our holistic health principles to address those specific imbalances. The breath is so powerful. It's ridiculous. It's literally the life force energy that downstream, it affects every single system and cell in the body. It affects the mind, and simply changing your breathing pattern for a few minutes dramatically changes your state. I don't know why we're so deep into big pharma when our breath is right there. It is the perfect medicine for our body because it's shifting not only our body, like our physical, but also our mental, emotional. The more you do it, the more powerful it gets. There's no reliance, as in you take a drug and then you get addicted to it, you know? You can't get addicted to the breath. You need it to live. It's not an addiction. And there's not like habituation, I can't think of the exact word, but when you take a medication and then you get accustomed to it and you need more of the medication, that's not going to happen with the breath. If you're doing the right techniques, typically they get more potent as you do it, because you actually get better at breathing, particularly as the more your body opens up, and then you don't have that same habituation to the technique, yeah? So this is just one dimension of our prescriptions. So we could talk about water, which is pretty basic for all of them. Times 0.33 of your weight in kilograms is the general amount of clean water that you should drink per day. Just as a general recommendation, not tap water, good purified water with the right amount of minerals and pH content. That's a super easy one. Eating's going to shift depending on what you're going through. If you're working out a lot, you're going to eat different than if you're doing a lot more meditation and stillness practices. If your system is stressed, as the example we've been giving, it might be nice to do a detox. We didn't talk a lot about what this person's eating habits are, but we know that there's stuff going on with the abdomen. We talked about this, and the digestion wasn't as well because there's stress in the system preventing the relaxation in the core region due to self-esteem. And I did mention this, overeating. I think it was with this example, or I just talked about it in general. But if there's underlying emotion stored in the organs and stomach, etc., and there's a lot of food moving through, it's hard to digest that emotion, and we can further imbalances into the system. So maybe a day of fasting, or an intermittent fast, or a day of juicing and greening would be most supportive. So we look, how do we modulate the diet to help support what we found in the underlying energetics, yeah? And then there's thinking. Well, we talked about this underlying, I don't have enough. And if we go deeper into that, we look to see what is the goal, what is the challenge, what is the belief system, and what are the other thoughts that are coming up, and can we identify those thoughts, and what are the dream affirmative thoughts that we can switch to that would align with it's dream affirmative, what our dream is, yeah? I won't go too deep into that. I think you understand the shifting over of the old narrative to the new narrative, out of the disempowering into the empowering. We have sleep. How can we modulate our sleep? General recommendations for 7 to 9 hours, being in darkness or low light conditions, at least an hour before at bed, no blue lights. Use blue light blocking glasses. Low stimulation before bed, these kinds of things. Particularly if the nervous system is taxed and you're in burnout, you might need to sleep 9 hours a night, and protecting your bedtime hours and having that as a sacred ritual might be the game changer. And then the last one was moving, which is the most extensive one in regards to the system, because primarily we're talking about life force energy and applying it with the Wuji internal art. So I'm not specialized in diet as much as I am in the movement practices, because that's where I've chosen to take my system. I do have background diet and in lifestyle coaching, etc., which I've been practicing for well over a decade in my own personal life and working with other individuals. But most of this leads to what are the breathing practices and the moving practices that can be supportive, as well as addressing the underlying psychoenergetics of what are the identified problems, etc. Phew! All right, let's just trace where we're at. We went through the whole holistic energy medicine model, looking at the vision. Where's the imbalance? Is it too much, too little? Skipping over the 3 and 4 realms, the mapping of the 5 elements, which is the primary negative emotion that's out of balance, is the easiest way to go into this. But there's many other symptoms and things that we can look at. ChatGPT is great for all this. I have sheets that are really great for all this. Which body zone is it in? That's a real easy way to connect it with what chakra is in it, you know what I mean? And then we can look at the 8 trigrams, not to build too many pieces on there. Let's keep it simple. And then we apply this to the 8 holistic health principles. Once we apply it to the 8 holistic health principles, we have weekly goals that we can look at. So this is what an individual would be doing every single week. They would take an assessment of what their primary dream is, what those challenges are, and then go through what's happening in the body, and then setting the foundational routines. Now, I do recommend, if I work with coaching clients, that they have a minimum daily practice in Wuji Qigong, which is to apply the 9-9, the formula, and a basic practice of Wuji. The 9-9 is taking 9 ohms and 9 sais. That's a morning and night practice that is short and simple for individuals to connect with on a daily basis, but is really potent. An ohm is vibrational medicine. As you make the sounds of the ohm, you vibrate the body, which clears up stagnation, which gives you a deep and intimate experience of your own body as you make the sound. The sai is another tool, an energy medicine tool for releasing stagnation, for opening up the heart, for connecting to the heart with coherence. And then actually it's the 9-9, and then there's time after that. So not simply 9 breaths, 9 ohms, 9 sais, but also a space after that, maybe 9 minutes of meditation, 9 minutes of conscious connected breath work, etc. On top of that, I recommend all my clients use the formula. So this is the 6-part formula, which is to attune, align, clear, cultivate, create, and act. I'll discuss this briefly. I could spend another whole episode on this, and I'm sure I've talked about it in other podcasts. I just remade the 6 foundational the formula. I just remade the formula with breathwork and mudras, which has been a really potent way to enter into it. Just like the system, I have short versions of all these things in their more expanded process. So the formula can take 5 minutes, it can take an hour. The whole idea is it's an alignment formula. So the first step is to attune yourself to yourself by taking sai breaths. Or the Om works. But you're attuning to your heart, the intelligence of your heart where your spirit speaks through, creating coherence in the body and mind. The second step is to align. The breathing exercise for this is to breathe in love, like the unconditional love of the universe. And then breathe out love, and then visualize it going out towards your projects and your dreams. So this is you aligning with your dreams. As you bring to mind and heart your dreams, you're opening up your imaginal and visionary space where your higher mind can speak more to you. You're directing your mind, because we fill our minds with so many things, especially if we're watching TV and Instagram, and not all of that is aligned with our dream. So we spend time to energetically connect our mind with what is important to us, and we breathe love through us, not our love, but the Creator's love that's all around, and then through and to those dreams. Then there's a clearing phase where we can identify any fears. This is where it can be a short exercise or a longer process, because dealing with those fears can take more than 5 minutes, But just as a brief exercise, recognize if there are any fears or challenges, just like the step number 1 where we look at our vision and identify them. But this time as a breathing exercise like Kapalabhati, 1 to 3 sets of 30 sharp breaths out with passive inhales into a Kali's breath, like lion's breath, sticking the tongue out and pressing all the breath out, which is a detoxification breath, because we can work with our mind and our breathing to support the purging of that fear from our system. So that's the clearing. And then the cultivation, I have a smiling practice that I do where I inhale, I lift my hands above my head and I smile. And then exhale, my hands slowly move down and I release and relax my smile. And I get used to cultivating my energy so that when I inhale, I smile from the root all the way up to the top of my head, little uplift to the corners of the lips. And then as I exhale, I relax my smile, but keep the upliftment of joy in my body. This stage is to cultivate my mind to positivity, to receptivity, to gratitude and appreciation, not because something is happening outside of me, but because I choose as a mindset to show up to life with a smile on my face. And then create here can mean like choosing a theme or archetype to embody. So the next step is to act. So the process is almost over and taking action is a very important step. How do I want to approach that action? If I'm doing this in the morning, how do I want to approach my day? Do I want to embody the king energy, warrior energy who sees challenge as opportunity? Do I want to be my lover who feels the world as beautiful? What type of archetype or theme do I want to approach life with? If I'm facing challenge, can I pick the motto, I see my challenges as opportunities, and explore that theme throughout my day? Rather than showing up to work, not choosing how you want to think. So old patterns of thinking, old stories, and an old, let's say, character that you used to show up in takes the mainstream, and that chemistry, the biochemistry creates similar thinking patterns, and then it's just stuck in the same old routines. Whereas having that vision, aligning your energy, choosing positivity, choosing a theme, choosing a mindset, and showing up to that same job can be a completely different thing. So that's the alignment formula. And we can utilize this, as I mentioned, in short, like 5 minutes, multiple times a day, or at least one, to set the tone of our vibration of connecting to our higher goals, breathing love into them. And what happens when we do this, it allows our higher mind to speak through us, to us and through us. And building the bridge of love and clearing out the fears brings them out of the shadows, allows them to be identified so that we can work on them. And then empowering the body and mind with internal resourcing through breathwork practices to self-regulate, to self-heal, on a more profound level to self-realize. It's a really profound way to begin every day. And then the last thing I recommend people do on a daily basis is the Wuji, yoga or Qigong. And then, because we're talking about the systems here, specific practices. So this is what I help people to do when they work with me is, what are the core imbalances that are themes in your life or that are showing up right now? And what are the specific practices from the information gathered from the energetic maps that are going to support you through this cycle of your life? So given the information that we had before, this individual is working a job they don't like. They're feeling disempowered, third chakra. They have safety and security issues around finances. Their body's locking up. Now, what is prescribed for them might be very unique. It might be like they want to be a dancer, so dance every day. But it might be like they don't want to be a dancer. They want to start a business selling teddy bears, but they feel so restricted in their job that they're doing right now that they might want to dance because they're feeling really restricted. And the freeness of dancing, like free movement, not particular style dancing, might be the best prescription for them. This is where it's important to understand that Qigong means energy skill. It's not a rigid set of practices or movements. It's just what we're doing here. We're assessing the energetic system and prescribing particular movements and breathing exercises that are going to bring harmony to the system. As I mentioned with the 8 Bagua, like when I was going through my own system, because my system had some tension, it was feeling hard, I applied the opposite quality to bring it into harmony. It's doing just that with any number of movement to breathing exercises. If there's a lot of stagnation in the body, maybe some thunderous dance movements is the best movement. However, we can be a little bit more prescriptive if there's hip and core stuff going around. Maybe like, I mean, this is a hard movement to describe, but grabbing for the elbows in the standing position with the feet shoulder width apart, and then rapid core twisting from side to side, like side twisting with Kapalabhati. Every time twisting, exhaling the breath out, which is a great core workout. It's also really good for the contraction of the core, then the releasing of it, which I mentioned in the example. The individual has stress in their core and it's causing too much contraction and not enough relaxation. So you see how we're identifying where the energy is blocked in the system. This is for the core more so than the legs, but I would create another prescription that would be added to their routine to address the legs. And then we're creating a specific movement and breathing pattern that's going to address that. And then, as I mentioned, we could do something for the legs. And then there's something going on with the confidence. So I could get them at the end of their routine to stand in front of the mirror and then affirm some things. Give themselves 10 genuine compliments a day in the mirror. Do you see how this is working? So we're looking what's going on in the psyche. What are the blockages and what's the repatterning or what's the empowerment that can be done through the practice. And this is why Wuji means ultimate emptiness. And it's an internal art that is mostly comprised of yoga and qigong as its basis, but it opens itself up to all kinds of practices. And this is what I like to teach, is foundational principles, and then individuals have their own way of working with this. This means you learning this system, or individuals who become practitioners of this system, learn their own way because they have their own tools that have helped them in their life, which they can inspire others with. Once we understand Qigong at the level of energetic skill, at the level of, hey, what's happening with the energy and what can I do to bring it into harmony, then we can apply any practice. I gave an example the other day that doing the dishes is Qigong if you do the dishes well. And I don't mean that you clean them well and you stack them properly. I mean that if you notice your energy is really scattered and in your head, you may want to, that's like the wind energy, you may want to call upon the energy of mountain and stand still for 10 breaths before you do the dishes. And then long, slow, deep breathing as you slowly do the dishes, which will help to calm that sporadic wind energy into mountain energy. Now you're doing Qigong while you're doing the dishes. This is the living art which creates a way in life. And this is what it's all about, because we're constantly working with our life force energy management. And it's moving through different phases and energies. It's transforming from wind to wood to water through changing conditions. We're facing challenges. The more that we understand our energy as a moment-to-moment experience, then this whole system becomes completely intuitive. It becomes, it's quite extensive for me to talk about all this, and I hope it's not too confusing, especially with my tangenting. Is that a word? Jumping from tangent to tangent, which I did less in this episode. But you get the idea of this is just teaching what's already happening in your system, and then offering a way of looking at it on a daily and weekly basis to track it more so that we can make more intelligent decisions about things we're already doing, like our eating, sleeping, moving, etc., which are the foundations of our life and health, and that have the biggest ripple and can sometimes be the hardest things to change because of how routine and habituated they become. So spending time to focus on these allows us to go much deeper into them. Some of the other things that I recommend my clients do on a weekly basis is to build or draw, a mandala, which is in some sense just a circle. And the circle and what is drawn in there represents the microcosm of your life for the week as you project it out. So I've been doing this practice for, maybe 2 years. Not every single week, but I'll do like a yearly one. So I've done that multiple years, and doing like monthly to weekly ones has been really supportive. And what I do is I draw a big circle and draw many of the key themes and things I'm orienting towards, because symbols have a very powerful way of speaking to the psyche, as well as the act of drawing and creating helps to tap into our imagination, which is connected with our higher mind. And then I also do this with themes. So above my mandala, I'll have a theme. Like my last one, I wrote sage, fierce devotion, and mature love. And then below it, I may have some of my other key themes or things that I want to do. This is not where I put all my goals, but some other key like phrases. Like I have written every breath, every step, which is a reminder for me to live my breath, live my prayer, like the vision of my life, every breath, every step. Another really important one that has been in my life is writing my story as like journaling. This gets into the theme. This gets into choosing mindset. This gets into empowering the story versus the habitual patterns of the stories that are just playing in the mind, which we're not necessarily choosing, which are more like conditioning or just not a choice. So they've it's been built up in there, which may not be the preferable ones. So what I might do with this one is on a monthly-ish basis, I'll write like a big summary of where I've been and where I'm going. And it usually ends with, it always ends with like so much positivity, because it's like I'm processing the negativity. Hey, this happened and this was the meaning that I got. This is the wisdom. This is what I've learned. And this is where I'm going to take that information. I feel like this is such an important exercise. I'm a little biased because I am a writer, and writing for me just like flows out like breath. So that feels really natural to me, as well as just doing little journal entries here and there. I'm not so rigid on many of these patterns because my foundational ones are my meditation and Wuji practice. So the writing and the drawing and other ones are ones that I do every now and again, but some people will want to do them every day if that's more of their way of connecting with their self in these ways, or their imagination. One that I didn't talk about was prescription of a mantra. It's the same thing as prescribing a movement or breathing exercise. If there's a specific imbalance, you may be prescribed a specific mantra or even a song, even just like a common song that gives you a lot of hope for a certain cycle or challenge that you're in. Maybe it's Eminem, Lose Yourself, or not Lose Yourself. What's the one epic one from his movie? Lose yourself in the music the moment. Yeah, it is that song, right? Anyways, that song gave me a lot of hope at some point in my life. And it might be something like that. It doesn't have to be a spiritual song, though mantras have a power to them, particularly in their repetitive format, their melodic format, their repeatability, and how it trains the mind, as well as Sanskrit is a vibrational language, meaning that it's the meaning of the words are in the sounds. So they're not symbols that represent things. That means that even if you don't understand the mantra, saying it has the benefit. And eventually you may find out the meaning of the mantra, they say, through repeating it even without knowing it. So mantras can be really key, as I mentioned as well. Phrases, like every breath, every step, or something to pull you through. Those can all be really key prescriptions. I feel like that covers most of what I wanted to talk about. I know it's a big system, and I probably could have helped you along with some visual diagrams, and I have all the visual diagrams to help, and there's just a lot of things, and it's a really extensive system. And as I mentioned, this is really near and dear to my heart. It's being birthed through me, and I can see the development of where it's going to varying degrees, and how I can actually bring it forward to different people at different levels, because obviously this is too much for a person just wanting an intro into it, and depending on how deep they want to go, then I have to be able to offer it in different ways, which I have experimented with many different worksheets, and I have a visual in my head like like the human design or like the gene keys, where there's a website and you can click on vision and click on forces, and there's different worksheets and there's different maps or um, aspects of the system that you can work through of like, hey, let's do my assessments. And then we click on all of these and you can do all the assessments. And I think that's a great model. But ultimately, as I mentioned, this goes into the personal practice of feeling these things and building up the intelligence there. So one of my models is a series of mudras for each of these that you feel into, just like how we did the formula, how there's mudras and breathing exercises. So for the vision, you might do like Anjali prayer position as you visualize what your vision is. And then you can connect if there's any challenges. As you do the two forces, you can have another mudra, and then you check in with your breathing, which is one of the best ways to determine if you're in and out of the yin and yang balance. 5 elements, there's tons of ways to check these with breathing and other exercises of actually feeling into your energetics rather than going through a thought process or like a checklist online. And body zones is pretty obvious. So these things are more so about being guided into your own body. So having a series of meditations and other things would be really supportive. These are the things that I teach people in person. They're a little bit harder to transmit in a general way online rather than when I'm speaking to a specific person, you know? So I hope there's been some transmission of what it is to track your life force energy through various different models and energetic maps that help give a lot of insight about what is happening on the underlying energetics, because the idea is that imbalance happens first in the mind and energy and then shows up in the body. So when we learn to track, hey, I'm feeling negative emotion, frustration, if we release that, no buildup, no problem. If there's some frustration, it's having an effect on the energy and we're not paying attention to it, that builds and builds and builds and eventually a tumor. So if we can be more up on our energetics before things arise into symptoms, before things arise into diseases, this is so much better. And this is also the way towards optimization of our energy, right? So it's not just can we get out of imbalance or disease, it's how can we optimize our energy by allowing life force energy to move through us in the most productive of ways, and to use that energy well, to open ourselves 10 out of 10 to receiving that spirit and allowing it to go into our actions, our thinking, because these are all energy leaks. If we're not thinking dream affirmative thoughts, that's our energy leak. If we're using our sexual energies for something that's out of alignment with what we really want, that's an energy leak. If we're full of fear, that's an energy leak. And that's an energy leak that's preventing us from moving forward with our goals and our dreams. So the people who I know who are very meticulous with their energy are very successful because they're aware at a very subtle level of that most intimate communication within themselves and with the universe. And that's how we come into harmony with the universal principles that all is one, as above, so below. Everything is polarity and vibration, rhythms and cycles, cause and effect and gender. And these are all equations of energy. And as we get to know this more and more, we can become much more successful, much more healthy, and in alignment with our dreams. This is what allows us to live our dharma and get off that big pharma, you know? So if you want to learn more about this system, find some links in the description below. As you can tell, I'm building the system, still learning from it in many ways, applying it to greater and greater degrees. It's been such a support to my life. I love doing the alignment work every week. It helps me out so much. I do a number of different ones of like ratings every week, and I see these small oscillations in the things that I do, and this has helped me so much to fine-tune my practices and to become very intelligent at reading my own system And as a result, to be able to read other people's systems and apply meditation like medication. And I just don't see anything else like this. I mean, there's things that are like this, but not like this, you know? So it brings me a lot of joy to have created something that works and is so personal to me and has supported my process so much. So I'm really happy that I'm able to share this with y'all. So just a quick summary. We have the holistic energy medicine map. The 8 dimensions are your 1 vision, 2 forces. There are 3 realms and 4 directions, 5 elements. There are 6 body zones and the 7 chakras. There's the 8 Bagua principles of energy. And then our prescription is the 8 holistic health principles. That's all for today. Blessings and good chi.